Is this some kind of a joke? The words, slick with venom and disbelief, echoed in the cavernous silence of the courtroom. Prosecutor Alistair Thorne, a man whose tailored suit probably cost more than the car Elias Vance drove, sneered across the polished expanse of wood separating them. They all thought it was over. They thought the single father in the grease-stained coveralls was finished, another piece of refuse to be swept out of the pristine halls of justice, but they had no idea this man was about to rewrite the law with his bare hands. The air in Family Courtroom 3B was stale, tasting of cheap floor polish and quiet desperation. It was a room designed to intimidate, with its towering wood-paneled walls and the immense, almost deific bench where the judge presided. The incessant, low hum of the fluorescent lights overhead felt like a physical pressure on Elias's shoulders. He stood alone at the respondent's table. He had no lawyer. He could have afforded one, a good one, but this was a fight he needed to wage himself. It was a matter of principle, a concept that felt alien in this room. His hands, calloused and clean, but with engine grease permanently etched into the lines of his knuckles, rested calmly on the worn wood. He wore his work clothes, a navy blue mechanic's jumpsuit with Vance Precision Auto stitched in neat white letters over his heart. He had come straight from a complex timing belt replacement on a vintage Porsche, a job that required more patience and precision than most brain surgeries. Across the aisle, his ex-wife, Jessica, sat beside her lawyer. She refused to meet Elias's gaze, her focus fixed on a scuff mark on the floor. She was a ghost in this proceeding, a puppet whose strings were being pulled by the man beside her. That man was Alistair. Thorne was a predator, clad in Armani. His silver hair was perfectly coiffed, his jawline sharp, his cufflinks glinting under the harsh lights like a second set of teeth. He radiated an aura of expensive, effortless superiority. He looked at Elias not as an opponent, but as an insect, a nuisance to be crushed under the heel of his $5,000 Italian leather shoe. Thorne adjusted his tie, a sliver of crimson silk. He mentally rehearsed his closing. It was almost too easy. The optics were perfect. On one side, his client, a concerned mother, represented by a pillar of the legal community. On the other, a low-class mechanic, a black man in dirty work clothes. A thug. The narrative wrote itself. The judge would see it, the court would see it, and this farce would be over before lunch. The Honorable Judge Marcus Holloway entered, his black robe sweeping behind him like a storm cloud. He was an older man with a face carved from granite and eyes that missed nothing. He settled into his high-backed leather chair, the worn material groaning in protest. "Let us proceed." Judge Holloway's voice was a low rumble, devoid of warmth. "Mr. Thorne, you may begin your cross-examination of the respondent, Mr. Vance." Thorne rose with the fluid grace of a shark. He gave Elias a condescending smile that did not reach his cold gray eyes. "Thank you, Your Honor." He paced before Elias, the click of his shoes on the linoleum, the only sound in the tense room. He was building the drama, setting the stage for the kill. "Mr. Vance," he began, his tone dripping with false civility, "you are a mechanic, is that correct? I own and operate a performance and classic car restoration garage." His voice was steady, measured. It held no anger, no fear, only facts. Thorne waved a dismissive hand. "A mechanic, then. Tell me, what kind of environment is a garage for a 7-year-old girl?" He did not wait for an answer. He turned and strode to his table, picking up a glossy photograph. He presented it to the judge, then held it up for Elias to see. It was a picture of Elias's workshop, tools neatly arranged on pegboards, a half-disassembled engine block on a stand. "Is this where you propose to raise your daughter, Maya? Amongst the filth, the dangerous equipment, the toxic chemicals?" Thorne's voice rose with theatrical disgust. Elias looked at the photograph. He saw his life's work. He saw order, precision, and passion. Thorne saw only a weapon to be used against him. "My daughter does not live in my garage, Mr. Thorne," Elias replied, his tone unchanged. "She lives in our home, which, as you know from the submitted documents, is attached to the property but is a completely separate and safe living space." Thorne scoffed, a sharp, ugly sound. "A home you can barely afford. Is that not so? Tell the court, Mr. Vance, about your finances, about the instability." This was the line of attack. To paint him as a poor, struggling brute, incapable of providing a stable home, a racist and classist caricature brought to life. Elias had anticipated it. He had prepared for it. He remained silent, letting the accusation hang in the air. He watched Thorne, cataloguing every micro-expression, every shift in weight, every subtle tell. That was his weakness. It was always the weakness of bullies. Thorne saw the silence as a victory. He saw a cornered animal, witless and defeated. "He's got nothing," Thorne thought, a thrill of predatory joy shooting through him. "This kid is out of his depth. He's going to break. I'll make him break." "Let me rephrase," Thorne sneered, leaning forward on the respondent's table, invading Elias's personal space. "Isn't it true that your business, Vance Precision Auto, is on the verge of bankruptcy?" There was no flicker of fear in his eyes. There was only a profound, unsettling calm. It was the calm of a bomb technician assessing a live device. "No, Mr. Thorne," Elias said softly. "That is not true." The lawyer straightened up, his smirk widening. He turned to the judge. "Your Honor, at this time the petitioner would like to submit into evidence a certified financial statement from the respondent's primary business bank account, acquired via subpoena." He slid a document across his table to the clerk, who passed it up to the judge. A copy was handed to Elias. Elias glanced at the paper. It was a forgery, and a clumsy one at that. The numbers were all wrong, showing debts that did not exist and an income that was a fraction of the reality. It was designed to paint a picture of utter financial ruin. Judge Holloway studied the document, his brow furrowed. He looked from the paper to Elias, his expression unreadable but tinged with what looked like disappointment. The narrative was working. The judge was buying it. "Mr. Vance," the judge said, his voice heavy, "this document suggests your financial situation is precarious, to say the least. Do you have a response to this?" The moment of apparent defeat, the public humiliation. Elias could feel Jessica's pity from across the room, mixed with a faint, guilty relief. He could feel Thorne's triumph, like a physical heat. Elias took a slow, deliberate breath. He did not look at the fraudulent document in his hand. He looked directly at Alistair Thorne. "Yes, Your Honor," Elias said, his voice as calm as still water. "I do." He placed the forged statement neatly on his table. He did not raise his voice. He did not protest his innocence. He changed the entire battlefield with a single, devastating move. "Your Honor, I would like to request permission to call Mr. Alistair Thorne to the stand as a witness." A collective gasp went through the small gallery. Jessica's head snapped up, her eyes wide with shock. The court reporter's fingers froze over her keys. Thorne actually laughed. A short, barking sound of disbelief. "Objection, Your Honor," he boomed. It's a desperate, ridiculous tactic from a pro se defendant who is clearly in over his head. On what grounds? Judge Holloway looked down at Elias, his expression a mixture of stern curiosity and irritation. "Mr. Vance, this is a highly irregular request. You had better have an exceptionally good reason." Elias stood straight, his posture that of a man accustomed to standing before authority. It was a subtle shift, but it was there. The slouch of the tired mechanic was gone. "The grounds are relevance and foundation, Your Honor," Elias stated, his voice ringing with newfound clarity and precision. "Specifically regarding the document just entered into evidence as Petitioner's Exhibit C, I wish to question Mr. Thorne on his compliance with State Bar Rule of Professional Conduct 3.3, candor toward the tribunal." Silence. Absolute, deafening silence. Alistair Thorne's smirk faltered. The specific, technical citation hit him like a physical blow. This wasn't the fumbling of an ignorant layman. This was the precise language of a lawyer. A cold knot of unease began to form in his stomach. Thorne thought, a flicker of genuine confusion piercing his arrogance. He must have looked it up online. A desperate Google search. That's all it is. Judge Holloway's eyebrows rose a fraction of an inch. He peered down at Elias over his reading glasses, his gaze sharp and analytical. For the first time, he seemed to be truly seeing the man in the mechanic's jumpsuit. "Mr. Thorne," the judge said slowly, his eyes still on Elias. "The respondent has cited a specific and serious rule of conduct. While the request remains irregular, the allegation it implies is grave. I'm going to allow it." He banged his gavel. The sound cracked like a gunshot in the silent room. "Mr. Thorne, you will take the stand?" The color drained from Alistair Thorne's face. For a moment he just stood there, sputtering, his carefully constructed composure shattering like cheap glass. "Your Honor, this is an outrage. I am an officer of the court, and you will follow my orders in it." Judge Holloway's voice was pure steel. "Take the stand now." Shaking with a mixture of fury and a new terrifying dread, Thorne stumbled towards the witness box. He felt the eyes of everyone in the room on him. The predator had just been forced into the cage. He sat heavily in the witness chair, his hands gripping the wooden arm so tightly his knuckles turned white. He glared at Elias, his mind racing. He tried to project confidence, but a sheen of cold sweat had broken out on his forehead. Elias walked to the respondent's lectern, moving with a quiet, deliberate economy of motion. He needed none. He had spent weeks preparing for this single moment, running every variable, every possible outcome through his mind. "Mr. Thorne," Elias began, his voice still quiet, but now imbued with a lethal precision. "You submitted Exhibit C, the financial statement, to this court. Is that correct?" "Of course, I did," Thorne snapped, his voice tight. "It was obtained legally through a subpoena served to your bank." "Which bank, Mr. Thorne?" Thorne hesitated for a split second. "City National Bank, as the document clearly states." "And when did you receive this document from City National Bank?" Elias asked, his tone conversational. "My office received it yesterday morning," Thorne said, regaining some of his bluster. "It is a certified copy of your account records for the past 6 months." Elias nodded slowly. "That means it is an exact, unaltered duplicate of the original record provided by the bank." "That is the definition of the term, yes," Thorne said condescendingly. "Perhaps we should get you a dictionary, boy." Judge Holloway's gavel struck the block again, a sharp rebuke. "Watch your tone, counselor." Address the respondent as Mr. Vance. Thorne's jaw tightened, a muscle twitching in his cheek. The word boy had been a calculated insult, a way to reassert his dominance. It had backfired. Elias remained unperturbed. He picked up the fraudulent document from his table. "Mr. Thorne, are you familiar with exchangeable image, file format data, more commonly known as EXIF? Data?" A blank look crossed Thorne's face. "I'm a lawyer, not a computer technician." "I'm aware," Elias said. a ghost of a smile touching his lips. EXIF data is a type of metadata embedded in digital files, including PDF documents scanned from paper copies. It contains information like the make and model of the scanner used, the date and time of the scan, and even the software used to create or modify the file. He placed the document under the courtroom's evidence projector. The page filled the large screen on the wall. "Your Honor," Elias said, addressing the judge but never taking his eyes off Thorne. "I am, by trade, a diagnostician. I find problems others cannot. Whether it's in a $1 million engine or a digital file, the principles are the same. You look for the anomalies. You follow the data." He pointed a steady finger at the screen. "I ran a forensic analysis on the digital copy of Exhibit C that your office served to me via email last night." Thorne's heart began to hammer against his ribs. This was not happening. This could not be happening. "The EXIF data on this file tells a very interesting story, Mr. Thorne," Elias continued, his voice dropping slightly, becoming more intense. "It shows the document was not scanned yesterday morning. It was scanned at 11:47 p.m. 2 nights ago." He paused, letting the information sink in. "Furthermore, it wasn't scanned from a certified bank document. The metadata indicates the original file was a JPEG image, likely a photograph taken with a smartphone, which was then imported into Adobe Photoshop." Thorne opened his mouth to object, but no sound came out. His throat was desert dry. "The file was then modified," Elias went on, his voice a relentless factual hammer. "Specifically, the numbers in the debits and balance columns were altered. The EXIF data logs every change. It shows the file was saved as a new version at 11:58 p.m. by a user logged in as Atorn. It was then printed and scanned again at 8:05 a.m. yesterday morning on a Xerox Workcenter 7800 series scanner. My research indicates that is the precise model of multifunction printer used by your law firm, Thorne, Davies, and Finch. Is that correct?" Alistair Thorne was a statue of ice. The blood had drained from his face, leaving it a pasty, sickly gray. He was staring at Elias, not with hatred, but with a dawning abject terror. He was looking at a ghost. This is a fabrication," Thorne stammered, his voice cracking. "He's making this up. It's technobabble. Is it?" Elias asked softly. He walked back to his table and picked up a thick bound folder. "Because this," he said, holding it up, "is the actual certified bank statement from City National Bank, which I retrieved in person this morning. It is accompanied by a sworn affidavit from the branch manager attesting to its authenticity." He handed the folder to the bailiff, who delivered it to the judge. "You will find, Your Honor," Elias said, his voice resonating with righteous power, "that my business is not, in fact, on the verge of bankruptcy. It cleared just over $1.2 million in gross revenue last year. My personal net worth is detailed on page 5. It is considerable." Judge Holloway opened the folder. He read the first page, then the second. His eyes widened, almost imperceptibly. He looked up from the documents, his gaze falling on Thorne like a physical weight. The disappointment was gone, replaced by a cold, gathering fury. Sweat poured down his temples, soaking the collar of his expensive shirt. His carefully constructed world was collapsing in on him, demolished brick by the man he had dismissed as a nobody. "And as for State Bar Rule 3.3, candor toward the tribunal," Elias continued, his voice now terrifyingly quiet, "it states, and I quote, 'A lawyer shall not knowingly make a false statement of fact or law to a tribunal or fail to correct a false statement of material fact or law previously made to the tribunal by the lawyer. It also prohibits a lawyer from offering evidence the lawyer knows to be false.' Mr. Thorne, you created it. You committed perjury by submitting it under oath, and you suborned perjury by having your client sign the accompanying affidavit. That is a felony. It is also an act of fraud upon the court. The trap was sprung. The takedown was in motion. "This is insane!" Thorne finally shrieked, his voice shrill with panic. He shot to his feet in the witness box, pointing a trembling finger at Elias. "He's nobody. He's a grease monkey. You can't possibly be taking the word of this thug over a respected member of the bar." The courtroom was in an uproar. Jessica was sobbing, her face buried in her hands, finally realizing the magnitude of the disaster her lawyer had created. Judge Holloway's face was a thunderous mask. He grabbed his gavel and slammed it down, not once, but 3 times. Bang! 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 The sound echoed like cannon fire, shocking the room into silence. "That is enough, counselor," the judge roared, his voice shaking the very foundations of the room. He stood to his full height, his presence suddenly immense, fearsome. "This is a joke!" Thorne screamed, completely unhinged. "You're going to listen to this? This boy?" Judge Holloway leaned forward, his knuckles white on the edge of the bench. His voice dropped, becoming a low, dangerous growl that cut through Thorne's hysteria. "Mr. Thorne," he began, his words slow and deliberate, each one a hammer blow. "But since you seem determined to dig your own grave, allow me to provide the shovel." He picked up another document from his desk. It was Elias's pro se filing, including his personal information and character references. In his submission, Mr. Vance included a copy of his military service record, ADD 214 form, the judge said, his eyes boring into Thorne. "I am looking at it more closely now." He held the paper up. "It states here that the respondent served 12 years in the United States Army. It lists numerous commendations. A Silver Star, a Purple Heart." The judge paused, his eyes finding Elias's across the room. A flicker of something profound passed between them, a shared understanding that transcended the courtroom. "It also lists his final unit of assignment," Judge Holloway continued, his voice thick with emotion. "First Special Forces Operational Detachment Delta, more commonly known as Delta Force." He put the paper down and looked directly at the crumbling Alistair Thorne. "That grease monkey, as you so eloquently put it, is Sergeant First Class Elias Vance, retired. An elite Tier 1 operator who served this country with more honor, integrity, and intelligence in a single day than you have displayed in your entire miserable, parasitic career." The judge's voice dropped even lower, becoming intensely personal, filled with a righteous and terrible wrath. "He is a man who has faced down enemies of this nation with nothing but his courage and his wits. He has planned and executed operations of unimaginable complexity under impossible pressure. And you, sir, you thought you could outsmart him with a forged bank statement?" He let the question hang in the air, a final damning indictment. Then came the final crushing blow. "That man," Judge Holloway said, his voice shaking with a rage he no longer tried to contain, as he pointed a finger at Elias, "is my brother." The words detonated in the silent courtroom. "He is my brother in arms. We served together in the JAG Corps and SOCOM. And you worthless excuse for a man, have committed fraud and perjury in my courtroom against my brother." Thorne simply collapsed back into the witness chair, a broken, wheezing mess. It was over. His life was over. "Bailiff," Judge Holloway commanded, his voice a clap of thunder, "take this man into custody. He is charged with criminal contempt of court, perjury, and felony evidence tampering. Get him out of my sight." 2 burly bailiffs moved in, hoisting the limp Alistair Thorne to his feet. They pulled his arms behind his back, the sharp click of the handcuffs sealing his fate. He didn't resist. As they led him past the respondent's table, His vacant eyes met Elias's for a fleeting moment. Elias looked at him, not with triumph, but with a quiet, profound pity. He leaned in slightly and spoke, his voice so soft only Thorn could hear it. "You are right about one thing," Elias said. "I am a mechanic. I fix things that are broken." Thorn was dragged from the courtroom, his $5,000 shoes scuffing pathetically on the floor. The fallout was immediate and catastrophic. Alistair Thorn's career did not just end, it was annihilated. The story of the arrogant lawyer taken down by a quiet, hyper-competent Special Forces veteran became front-page news. Headlines screamed from every newsstand, HURSAN. Fee. The State Bar Association used his case as a poster child for cracking down on unethical practices. The criminal charges stuck. Facing a mountain of irrefutable evidence, he pled guilty and was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison. His assets were frozen to pay the fines. His partners at the firm immediately erased his name from their letterhead, casting him out like a leper. His wife filed for divorce before the ink was dry. On his conviction, his license, his career, his pension, his freedom, his family. The ultimate irony was that, bankrupted by his own legal fees, he was forced to accept a public defender for his sentencing hearing. The man who once mocked the less fortunate was now entirely at their mercy. For Jessica, the humiliation was a brutal but necessary wake-up call. In the aftermath of the hearing, trembling and ashamed, she fired Thorn's firm and approached Elias in the hallway. Through her tears, she apologized and immediately agreed to his original custody proposal, a fair 50-50th split that prioritized their daughter's well-being above all else. The expensive legal battle was over, ended not by a judge's ruling, but by the simple, undeniable weight of the truth. The system, so often a sword used by the powerful against the weak, had been cleansed, if only in this one small courtroom. Weeks later, the scent of polish and high-octane fuel filled the air. Elias Vance stood in his office, a pristine, glass-walled room overlooking the main floor of his garage. Below, his team of expert mechanics moved with practiced ease, working on a collection of automotive masterpieces, a Ferrari, 250 GTO, a Gullwing Mercedes, a classic Aston Martin. The chaos Thorn had tried to portray was, in reality, a symphony of controlled, meticulous craftsmanship. His business, already successful, had exploded. Clients, drawn by the news stories, flocked to him. They came not just for his legendary skill with engines, but for the integrity he represented. He had become a local hero, a symbol of quiet competence and righteous justice. The phone on his desk buzzed. He picked it up. "Vance," he said. "Alias. It's Marcus." The voice on the other end was warm, familiar. "Judge Marcus Holloway." "Judge," Elias said, a rare smile touching his lips. "I was hoping you'd call. I told you to call me Marcus, brother." Holloway chuckled. "Just wanted to see how you and Maya were doing. And to thank you again. You exposed a rot in the system I knew was there, but could never quite pin down. The bar is launching a full investigation into Thorn's past cases. It seems our boy was leaving a trail of fabricated evidence for years." "He got arrogant," Elias said, looking out at the gleaming machinery below. "He thought the rules didn't apply to him. He thought the robes and the expensive suit made him a king. He forgot they're supposed to make you a servant. A lesson he's learning the hard way, Marcus said. Listen. The Army's JAG Corps has been calling me. They heard about what you did. They're looking for civilian consultants to teach digital forensics and critical analysis to their new lawyers. They want the best. They want you. Elias considered it for a moment. He looked at a framed photo on his desk. It was of him and his daughter, Maya, her face bright with a gap-toothed smile as she sat on his shoulders. Her world was safe now. Secure. Tell them I'll think about it, Elias said. Right now, I've got a 1967 Shelby GT 500 with a tricky carburetor that needs my full attention. They shared a laugh. The easy sound of two men who understood the value of a job done right. They said their goodbyes and Elias hung up the phone. He stood there for a long moment, watching the controlled, beautiful work happening in his garage. He had faced down bullies and tyrants his entire life, in dusty foreign lands and in the sterile corridors of power. The fight was always the same. It was always about restoring balance. He straightened his collar, left his quiet office, and walked back onto the floor of his garage, the place where he was most himself. He picked up a wrench and returned to his work, his hands sure, his mind clear, a quiet professional in a world that always needed fixing. What an incredible story of quiet competence and karmic justice. Elias Vance proved that you should never ever judge a book by its cover. The arrogant lawyer, Alistair Thorne, thought he was untouchable, that his expensive suit and fancy words made him superior. But karma came for him, not with a loud bang, but with the quiet, devastating precision of a man who knew the truth and had the skills to prove it. Thorne's hubris, his prejudice, and his underestimation of Elias were the tools of his own spectacular destruction. If you loved watching this entitled lawyer get exactly what he deserved, please smash that like button right now. It really helps the channel grow and lets us know you want more stories just like this one. Share this video with anyone who loves a satisfying story of karma where the underdog comes out on top. Everyone needs to see how a quiet professional can take down a loud-mouthed bully. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss out on our daily drama and revenge stories. We post new videos every single day, and you won't want to miss the next dose of justice being served. Let me know in the comments below, what would you have done if you were in Elias's shoes? Would you have had the patience and skill to set a trap like that? We love reading your comments. See you in the next video.